Hi there, welcome to the video. Welcome back if you tune in fairly regularly. We're going to be doing a little bit of sketching today, as you'll have seen in the title and the thumbnail. I thought I'd go with something a little bit more mainstream. It's come to my attention that my portfolio is full of weird, obscure things nobody's ever heard of, and that might not be the best commercial move. It's also quite a lot of old cars. I don't do many new cars. So I thought I'd do something modern today. I thought I'd do a Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah, I'm not very good at this, am I? My name's Angel. I'm a full-time artist. I do YouTube, I do car artwork, and you can find me on my website over here. There's also a Patreon, that's over here, and there's lots of other ways you can support me which are down in the description below, so do have a look down there and have a click about. I don't often work vertical or portrait, mainly because cars are sort of longer than they are tall usually, so portrait doesn't often work for them. But one thing I didn't like about this was when I laid it out like I normally do, it was quite a boring picture. So I thought I'd do something different and played about on the digitals and chopped the car up and moved it about until I found a layout that I liked, and then very roughly transferred that over to my paper. And I think this will work. I think you could frame this in a regular frame or in a frameless frame and it would work. I haven't decided what I'm doing with colour. I don't know if I'm going to make these two different colours or the same colour. We'll see. But my biggest challenge here is going to be the fact that the Beetle at this point has these very crisp, very sharp lines, which is not at all what I'm used to drawing. So at this point in the Beetle's history, the style of it has changed quite a lot from where it started back in the very late 30s and has got quite a bit bigger, but it's still characteristically the Beetle. You've still got the wings that stick out, you've still got the round headlights, but things like the rear lights have changed shape, they've got bigger, the wheels themselves are enormous now, and the styling of the car is a lot less friendly. The earlier cars, it's a much more friendly shape, but by now you've got these sharp creases in it. It's taken on that sort of, I don't know, that very smooth digital appearance, which gives me a bit of a challenge because I'm not that kind of an artist. I don't do very smooth digital looking things. I tend to do more organic and usually hand designed cars. So something like this requires more precision than I'm used to. I think it's another reason I avoid a lot of the newer designs, is just, I don't know, they just feel a bit clinical to me sometimes. Nope, you're not going to help me. But having said that, there are some modern cars that have come out in recent years that I quite like. And not so recent years, the Citroen Cactus, for example, I quite liked that when that first came out. I thought it was a little bit interesting. Okay, that's quite an old car by now, but you get my point. I think probably the newest car I can think of off the top of my head I like is the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I'm really rather partial to those, and I think if I had the money, that's a modern car I would probably buy, even with its touchscreen. This is a challenge. Every time I put a line down and I look back at my reference, I realise that everything's subtly just a bit off, and one little line being off a tiny bit looks really wrong for the rest. And this is something that I don't particularly enjoy about these kinds of designs. I think it'll look good when it's done, it's just, yeah, we're a little bit outside of my wheelhouse with this one. But hey, it's good to get out your comfort zone, it's good to challenge your own abilities and your own expectations. I don't hate it. I'm just having to be a little bit more careful. This one might have worked better as a digital portrait instead of a traditional media one. But they're a lot harder to record, so I would rather do this. There's a few bits I'm not thrilled about. I think most of the shape's okay, but like this wheel arch here, it sort of bulges out there, which it shouldn't do. Unless it's an optical illusion. This is the other problem. And it's going to be worse for you because you're at a funny angle with the camera. Sometimes you look at the shapes and you think they're wrong, and you correct them, and you find out that they weren't wrong at all, they were right. But I do think that line was wrong. I think that was a bit too squared off. And that's too squared off the other way. I'm going to have to be so careful when I ink this, because inking ends up being slightly different to your pencil lines. Not by much. And I think it's going to be very, very easy to introduce some lines that are incorrect on this. One interesting thing to note as well on wheels, I've been asked before why I don't just use a compass. You can get blunt point compasses, so you don't put a hole in the page. And it's because the wheels aren't actually round. And I know that sounds a bit strange, but when you draw a wheel, unless you're seeing it completely face on, and we're not here either, we're not seeing this completely face on, I'll explain why in a moment, they're not round. Visually they're going to be squashed one way or another. And the reason we aren't seeing these completely face on is we're not down here on the floor. And even if we were down here on the floor, then the wheel would be tilting, the top of it would be visually tilting towards us. But our view line is somewhere around about here, so the wheel is visually tilting away from us. So it's going to look a bit bigger on the bottom than it is on the top. The only way to see a wheel dead on is by that being your view line, and then that changes all the rest of the proportions of the car. So you just sort of have to trust that what you're drawing is round enough, and as long as it looks round enough, you're okay. But that's why I don't use a compass. A lot of the work I do is freehand because that's the only way to get things to look right. Even if they're not right, they've got to look right. It took me ages to get my head around that, because when I first started doing car artwork I was really worried about everything being perfect and blah blah blah, and it's, yeah, don't aim for perfection because it'll look weird. These spokes are slightly curved, not by much. It does mean you have some weird perspective going on. More subtle design touches that are very, very easy to miss. Well, that's top half done. Next, for the bottom half, which has a lot more going on. You know, the tricky thing for me with this one is my brain and my hands keep wanting me to do cuter proportions. They keep wanting me to make this kind of shorter and taller and rounder and friendlier. And that's not what this car is. This car is... It's a gym shoe, is what this car is. This is the sort of thing that you go to your Pilates class in. Oh, it's not bringing me joy. I don't hate it, but yeah, I'm very much reminding myself why I don't do modern cars very often, because the styling of them just isn't. It isn't welcoming. It's defensive. I don't know. I sometimes think car styling reflects who we are as a society. I mean, if you look at like some of the 80s cars where the 70s designs just warmed over a bit and reimagined, and they just look a bit depressed. I think that's fairly accurate for the time that they were made in. Nobody had any money unless they were very lucky, and everyone was just trying to make do with what they'd got. But when you get to this point, it feels like, I don't know, I'm getting a bit philosophical here, aren't I, on car design, but it just feels more like people wanted to show how successful and healthy and wealthy they were, and just in an aggressive way, not in a joyful way. Like the whole angry eyes phase that stuff went through. I'm very important, get out of my way. That sort of attitude. Don't miss that in my rearview mirror. No, I sort of miss that 90s thing where you just get cars that were fun and cute and novelty, like Nissan Figaros. There's a car I've not drawn, but Nissan Figaros, they're friendly and they make everybody smile. I mean, they're just a Nissan Micra in a posh frock, but they're cute and I like them and they make me happy. More of that, please. Okay, just the wheel to go. This is one thing where I do like digital a bit more, because if it was digital I could just copy this one, paste it down here and then tweak it where it needed to be and save myself a lot of time. But because it's traditional I have to draw the whole thing from scratch. It takes a bit longer. The other thing I noticed with this wheel well on the back, the shape isn't quite right. I think the back's okay, but the front, I've curved it too much there, so I need to straighten that out. Also, the wheel sort of sits a bit further forwards than you might expect. It's not right in the middle. I imagine if you put some load in the back, then it centres the wheel, so it means there should be more wheel gap this side than this side. Again, more subtle, tiny little details that make the difference between it looking right and it not looking right. There we are, sketch completed. So the next stage is going to be the inking and then the colouring. I'm going to leave this for a bit just so that I can refresh my eyes. It means that I can catch any mistakes before I do anything permanent on the page. And we'll come back to this in the next video. If you want to catch that one, be sure to subscribe. And of course, leave me some feedback down below. Suggestions for things you'd like to see me draw in the future. I do read the comments. It is great seeing what people think. And yeah, we'll see how this one goes. And we'll decide on some colours eventually. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.